Hi, I'm Simon. Welcome to B-Sides Liverpool. The views expressed in this talk are not the views of my current employer or previous employers. What they are a sort of series of things that I've learned in a fairly long IT career and things that people have shared with me generously, and I'm now sort of passing that on. And what we're talking about really is how to get security implemented, how to be effective, how to get stuff done. So let's begin. Just a bit of context, and this is applicable really everywhere. Even at home, I've got a big list of jobs that I should be doing when I'm doing other things. But in a work environment, this is really true. When I was doing data warehousing, when I was building e-commerce systems, we had more stuff that we needed to deliver. We never had the time or all the people we wanted, and budgets were tight. And from security, this is really important to sort of understand because it actually applies to security projects. But more importantly, for a lot of projects, what we require is other people to implement the controls we want, or to build the solutions we want, or to change the way they work so that we've got the correct security. So to get that, we need security agreed. We need to agree that it's important. We need to have it prioritized, and we need to get it implemented, because if you've got controls that aren't implemented, they're not really controls. So, who makes those decisions? How do we get this done is really what the basis of what I'm going to talk about for the next 15 to 20 minutes. So who makes that call? And to be effective and to make sure you've got that buy-in, you really need all of the people on the screens to be bought into a level that's appropriate. I've worked on teams where we've got engineers who are really enthusiastic, but actually if the product owner isn't bought in, then it's, the stuff doesn't get prioritized. If the exec sponsor's questioning why we're doing the security stuff, but the product owner's bought in, once again, it's that friction. And all these people really, really want to do the right thing, but they've got delivery pressures, the same as I've got delivery pressures. Probably everybody else has delivery pressures. If you don't have those delivery pressures, well, lucky you. It's not a place I've ever worked in. So that's, you probably have other problems that you need to solve, but this is what I'm really focusing on. So how do we get that sort of security agreed, aligned? So the first really important thing is understanding your company, because sometimes you talk to security people, and I work for security, and it doesn't matter what industry I work for. But if you're trying to influence people who actually it does matter, that's really not going to help where you're seen as a sort of outsider. So if you bought into your company, if you work for a telecoms company, and telecoms, you understand what telecoms is doing, how you make money, what the business goals are, you can start to build a business case around what you want to do. And that really can start to resonate. And one of the key things is what language you use. And each, groups of people use language in a certain way. You're one of the group, you're one of the tribe if you use this sort of language. Now, if you're trying to get people outside of security to support you and help you, you need to use the language they use rather than expect them to use your language. So I've worked in companies where we didn't have users, we would have colleagues. We didn't have customers, we had clients. Now, by using those words appropriately, you sort of show that you're part of the group. And it's all around, building those relationships, getting that empathy, because that will help you going forward. Also, what else is happening in the wider environment? And I'm not just talking company, the industry. Cyber was a huge example, which, to be honest, I had to learn the hard way. 15 years ago, cyber came out as this huge buzzword. Everything was cyber. Even your toaster was cyber. I hated it. To me, from a logical perspective, it was a William Gibson word that meant nothing. It was just rubbish. But one of my bosses took me aside and said, that might be your view, But when I phone the CFO's PA and say, I need to speak to the CFO about information security, I might get to speak to him in 2 weeks to a month's time for 15 minutes, and I'll get potentially bumped a couple of times. If I phone up and say, I want to talk about cyber, I'll probably get a meeting within 2 days. So by using that wider sort of language environment, what's happening, that sort of, yeah, that was a real eye-opener for me. Currently, zero trust. You know, who definitely knows what zero trust is? And if you do, talk to the person next to you, because I bet you they definitely know it's something slightly different. But what does it mean for you? What does it mean for what you're trying to deliver? How can you use that phrase, that terminology that other people are using around your company, the wider sort of ecosystem to get what you need done. Yeah. And plans, strategies, roadmaps are really important, but sometimes things come along that knock that out. So, nobody expected COVID, really. A few might have done, but what we definitely didn't expect was 18 months working from home. Now, how many people have refreshed their VPN infrastructure? I would expect lots. But while that's happening, can you include posture checking? Can you include linking into MFA? Are there other things that you can put in place off the back of this change that's already happening to deliver the security that your company needs for it to be successful? So these are some sort of wider areas. The next couple of few slides are much more around things you can personally do, because I actually like things that are actionable. And actions are really important, because if you, whatever you say, people will take to a certain point. If you don't back it up with actions, it will just become hollow. And the actions that you do really drive the behaviors that you will see. And also the behavior, the sort of team, the culture you want to drive. And the first one's probably the most important. Ideally what I want is someone to walk up to me and go, we did something, we didn't really understand what we're doing, I think we've got a problem. And at that point, you've got two things you can do. You can go, firstly, thank you for telling me, because that person probably doesn't want to admit they've done something wrong. And then, okay, let's sit down, let's talk it through, let's see what's happening. Rather than going, oh dear, or words that are slightly more robust and agricultural, and really getting angry about it. Because one way of doing it means somebody will come back again. The other means they're never going to come to you with a problem. Even better, after that event, if you can use company reward systems, some companies have these things where, every month an employee gets a bottle of wine. If they get that bottle of wine for bringing the problem to you, that's a very visible way of saying, we're open, we're here to help. Sitting down and understanding the problem and why it happened is the number two, which is, how do you, if you've never worked in a delivery team, how do you understand the pressures they're under? I don't know how many people here have worked on a delivery team. I've worked on grad schemes where we've had security grads. One of the things I've always recommended is for one of their 6-month rotations, they go out and work with a proper application delivery team that are delivering products for customers, colleagues, clients. Because then you understand that. And if you do a swap and you get one of their grads into security, you have a brilliant thing where when that person goes back, that grad's like a little beacon of security understanding that's really, really useful. Ultimately, everybody's trying to deliver stuff. You've got to be realistic, or you should be realistic, and look at the real risk. When someone comes up and says we're using TLS version 1.1, is that, the world's not going to end. It's not great, but I can live with that for a while. So let's take a risk-based approach. Let's see when they can fit it in. And if your standard says it should be within 4 weeks and they can't do it for 6, once again, what's the issue there? The final one here is security. We've got a reputation for saying no. And to be fair, quite regularly we do say no. But a lot of other teams are much happier for securities to say no than for them to say no. And I really push back. I had a great example where a team had built this really lightweight solution for one specific problem they were trying to solve. And they talked to us. They didn't have the budget for the enterprise solution, but because the enterprise solution was big, they didn't have the money. So they built their own, but they talked to security and they had the right security controls and features. It was fit for purpose from a security perspective. The enterprise architects did not like it. And understandably, because if you're an enterprise architect, you want one solution. The enterprise architects told me that I had to tell them to say, you can't use it. And the answer is no, you're the enterprise architects, you go and tell them, because from a security perspective, it's fine. And there are a number of examples where people like security, don't like to tell people no, and they'd much rather security did it. And the answer is from me, no, I'm not being the bearer of all bad news. The next one was really driven home at an interview I did a while back, where one of the interview guys said, engineering teams don't read standards. Standards aren't what they're into. They want to write code. They want things that make their life easier. If you give them a reference architecture that shows you the components, the patterns, potentially the pseudocode, and if you've got some shared services, even better, that's what they want. They want to be able to produce the code, to write, deliver the solutions they need to do. And our job as security is to make that easy to consume. Are you using the right format? Does everybody communicate on Slack and you send emails? Because if you do, you're going to miss your audience. And as much as security is everybody's responsibility, sometimes if they've not read the email because they're on Slack all day, that's just not going to happen. The other thing is looking at how you deliver. Does everybody, is security still doing waterfall? And everybody else is on 2-week sprints? Because if you are, really, you need to change. You're not going to get the whole of the company to change to align with the way security wants to deliver. And once again, this is all about making it consumable, making it easy. Every organization I've worked in, there have been teams that like security. To be honest, that's how I got into security. I was doing e-commerce development. I like the security side of it. And that got me my foothold in security. Where you've got guys that are doing security and they're doing it well, there's two things. One, cut them some slack sometimes, because actually, if they can't do what they need to do, they need a little longer to produce a document. They need some more time to deliver this final control. Really, in the grand scheme of things, if they're your best examples of security, be flexible, be pragmatic, let them do it. The other thing, though, is the one that really used to annoy me was when the security team needed, evidence of controls being put in or new controls being put in, coming into my team and going, you need to do all of these things. And it's like, well, hold on a second. We've got no notice. We've talked about backlogs. It's too big. Haven't got much time. But also, the team over there, you're not talking to. They don't even do half the stuff we do, and now you're expecting us to do more. So although it's sometimes really, you have to show that you're delivering stuff, and it can be very tempting to go to a team that's already doing security and ask them to do more. It's actually long-term counterproductive, because if they always feel that they're getting pressured to do more than everybody else, that will slowly build resentment. Finally, on this slide is, what's optional? TLS 1.3, it would be brilliant if you could do that. Actually, SSL v3, that's not optional. TLS 1.2 is okay. TLS 1.1, we need to go down the exception route. What's that exception route? And explaining to people that there's an exception route and there's a process that allows risk-based decisions where we can all agree about what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. and that the decision is made by somebody who is appropriately sort of informed and responsible for making that decision, allows that sort of visibility of the end-to-end process. You know, saying you have to do this and that's all it is really doesn't help in the long term. So my final two is actually one thing: threat modeling. I'm a bit of a threat modeling geek. I think it's fantastic. I'm not necessarily talking about tooling. The tooling is getting so much better, but actually as a process, as a something to deliver into the engineering teams, into all aspects of delivery. This is brilliant. And back to the previous slide, yeah, if you built those good relationships with teams, getting people to start doing this, you know, is a lot easier. And it's brilliant. The difference this makes in terms of engagement and ownership is just fantastic. The best example I've seen is where a colleague was threat modeling with a team. They found some stuff, not critical, you know, but stuff that wasn't right. The team, they broke for lunch. They came back. A couple of the engineers were late. When they arrived back, the question was, so where you been? They said, well, that thing that you found, we've just gone and fixed that. It's going into test tomorrow. It will be released early next week. Now, that level of engagement, I've never seen from a pen test, because really, if you think about it, you know, a threat model and a pen test are the same thing. You just slightly different, I suppose, but you know, one at the beginning of the process, one at the end of the process. You still get a list of things to fix, but that engagement from threat modeling, you know, it is just fantastic. And I think the other thing about threat modeling is security can get really excited by it and sort of swarm over it and take it over. But the critical thing is, if you want it to be sustainable, is to get people to do it themselves so that they can do it as part of a stand-up. They can do it in their planning sessions. They can do it in new feature development, with security facilitating training and providing more. And like I say, threat modeling is just great. There's so many different, you know, it's growing so much. As you can tell, I can talk about this for quite a while. But, you know, it doesn't matter which one you choose, just getting people into the processes, thinking of that mindset, it is just fantastic. So here's the final slide. And I think, you know, what we've been talking about is, I think captured here is, you know, effective security has to be implemented. There's no point having that WAF and never turning it on. It might tick a compliance box, but that's not what I'm about. Relationships matter, probably far more than you probably think at times, because they can really turn things around. When you need things done in a positive way, and actually when you need someone to really help you out. If you've built those relationships, they'll help you. Yeah. Think about this as security as customer focused. You know, what do your customers want? What do they need? Yeah, if you think about, would they come to you in your organization if they didn't have to? Finally, get threat modeling. It's just brilliant fun, and it's just great. The original call for papers asked for presentations to be linked to lyrics, preferably the Beatles. I couldn't do the Beatles. What I did get to was the Rolling Stones. And actually, I thought this was fantastic when I looked at it, because of what we're talking about is delivering what we need. And as it says, if you try sometimes, you find you get what you need. So thank you for your time. I hope you found it enjoyable. If anybody wants to have a chat about any of this, just look me up and enjoy the rest of the conference.